CEBA is this really interesting community who are passionate about advancing the clean energy transition moving forward.
Who are all coming together, all with the goal of decarbonizing the grid.
Advancing energy transformation in a way that is collaborative and effective.
Significant value in having a unified voice.
To basically break down barriers, innovate, find solutions together, enable and facilitate and accelerate clean energy procurement.
CEBA has a phenomenal culture. I'm very proud of the organization and who they are and what they believe in, and that passion.
They recognize that everyone is on different stages of their journey to clean energy purchasing and procurement.
So while you might have large companies and smaller companies, you might have more experienced companies and less experienced companies. I think it's all of those unique views that create innovation.
This really is the who's who of in this industry, and you're gonna miss out if you don't get involved.
There's no better value in the industry right now, whether or not you're a buyer or a seller, than the membership paid to CEBA.
I feel surrounded by many peers that have done very innovative work and really have trailblazed, and it's a privilege to be part of that group.
This being CEBA's 5-year anniversary, it really represents a significant achievement in the growing industry that we are as a clean energy buyer community.
5 years does not sound like a lot of time, but in 5 years, CEBA has achieved a lot. They have made their mark, and people are looking at CEBA as an organization that can drive change.
They have grown to now over 400 members from what I understand, and I fully expect that to grow tenfold in the next 5 to 10 years.
Seeing the industry transition forward, there's going to be more clean energy. There's going to be more access. To sit back and look at that as an industry is extremely exciting and a proud moment, I think, for everybody.
Good afternoon, CEBA community. It's time to celebrate. Welcome to the 2024 CEBA Spring Summit. Please welcome to the stage CEBA's Senior Director of Membership, Cheryl Comer.
Distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and cherished members of the CEBA community, a resounding welcome to you, our community, and thank you for joining us as we commence CEBA Spring Summit 2024. We gather here today in the magnificent state of Colorado for a conference, but it's bigger than that. As we set the scene for this summit, let me paint a picture for you. Picture a community united by a singular purpose to advance clean energy and sustainability. And picture a community of 400 member organizations and over 700 industry professionals coming together to exchange ideas and ignite change. This year, we also celebrate a significant milestone, 5 years of CEBA. That's all right. You know, as I began to reflect on 5 years, I researched the significance of the number 5. We have 5 senses: We have 5 fingers. There are 5 elements: fire, earth, water, air, and space. 5 represents transformation and freedom and adventure and adaptability and embracing change. And one that we're all familiar with, the high five, it's a gesture of celebration. So let's celebrate by turning to your neighbor or the person next to you, and let's give them a high five. So 5 years is a testament. It's a testament to our collective efforts and dedication to driving progress in the clean energy landscape. The CEBA community is a driven, ambitious, and energetic one, and we're here to harness our collective energy for an even brighter future. But before we get to that, it's essential that we pause. We should pause to acknowledge the land upon which we stand. And for centuries, these lands have been home to indigenous peoples. The rich history of this place and the people who have been here for centuries remind us of the importance of honoring and preserving our connection to the earth. And now it's my distinct privilege to introduce someone who embodies stewardship and community leadership. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Rick Waters, Executive Director of the Denver Indian Center.
Sure. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, and welcome to the Crossroads of Indian Country. My name is Rick Waters, and I'm Cherokee and Kiowa and serve as the Executive Director of the Denver Indian Center. Having spent my professional career of over 50 years working with the American Indian community, I'm especially delighted to be a small part of this gathering of professionals concerned about the environment and clean energy. On behalf of the Denver American Indian community, I would like to welcome everyone here today as you prepare to discuss new ideas, strategies, concepts towards helping the environment through promoting clean energy. I would especially like to thank the Clean Energy Buyers Association for reaching out to the Native community and inviting me to offer a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement before an important event or activity is something that is happening more and more around the world, and especially in progressive and enlightened communities. In the United States, it recognizes and brings awareness and respect to American Indian people as the original inhabitants and stewards of the land, and also reminds people that despite the historic trauma and inequities experienced by Native people throughout history, we are still here. Accepting the fact that Native peoples endured forced removal from their homeland and often inhumane treatment is important when understanding the history that has brought each of you to this very place we are now standing. And when truly understood, American Indian history is American history. In 1963, President John F. Kennedy described what many people call the invisibility of Native people when he stated, "American Indians remain probably the least understood and most misunderstood Americans of us all, and that it seems a basic requirement to study the history of Indian people." He went on to say that America has much to learn about the heritage of our American Indians, and only through this study can we as a nation do what must be done if our treatment of the American Indian is not marked down for all time as a national disgrace. With these thoughts in mind, I share this statement or land acknowledgement. Before this land we stand on became Denver or Colorado, it was known as Indian Country and the homeland and territory from time immemorial to many tribal nations, including but not limited to the Cheyenne, Arapaho, Ute, Comanche, Shoshone, and Kiowa. Recognized in many circles as the crossroads of Indian country, this area of Colorado was a site of trade, travel, hunting, and spiritual healing for these tribes. Today, according to the 2020 census, the Front Range in Colorado is currently home to over 100,000 self-identified American Indian and Alaska Natives, along with 2 federally recognized Indian reservations, the Southern Ute and Ute Mountain Ute tribes located in the southwest corner of Colorado. One of the biggest challenges faced in the American Indian community, and especially those living in urban areas, is overcoming the invisibility as described by President Kennedy over 60 years ago. Recognizing the relationship of American Indian culture and history and its direct tie to the land we stand on today, a land acknowledgement is a step in bringing about visibility, understanding, and awareness of the Native community, and one that we can all share. It is important to remember that the land is still here and that we are acknowledging the people that were here before removal. Similar to the mission and vision of Clean Energy Buyers Association, the Denver Indian Center advocates for equity in all areas of social determinants that impact our community, including the external environment of water and air, not only for Native Americans, but for all community members. We are all related, and as such, responsible for the stewardship of the land and environment. In closing, as you participate in this summit over the next few days, make a commitment when returning to your respective organizations, homes, and communities to reach out and see how you could partner with and better understand the Native community and share your time, energy, and resources. It takes coming together to get things done via networking, partnering, and collaboration. All parts of an action plan for progress and change that works. As a famous Cherokee statesman, Will Rogers, once said, "Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there." Let's continue to work together towards building more effective and equitable philanthropic systems of serving and empowering our communities, and especially those challenged with fewer opportunities and resources. Because at the end of the day, everyone benefits. Have a productive conference and enjoy your time in Denver. Aho, thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for that powerful land acknowledgement. Your words remind us of the importance of acknowledging the history and contributions of Indigenous peoples in our community. And I think your quote is perfect. Even if you're on the right track, you'll get run over if you just sit there. In other words, we've got to keep it moving. We know you aren't just sitting there, CEBA, and this quote can guide us through the week. So now as we move forward, let's take a moment to review some really essential information for our time together. Our objectives this week are super clear: to connect, to learn, and to collaborate. And as we heard overwhelmingly from our members last year, this, bringing our members together to learn and build and engage, is our secret sauce. And it remains powerful and relevant. Now, we recognize that each of us plays a vital role and has a unique opportunity in this transition. To ensure everyone has the best experience, we ask that you consider the following community agreements. These agreements ensure we create a safe and inclusive and respectful environment for all attendees. And remember to listen and participate, question assumptions, and be present. And of course, we have to maintain the trust of our peers by following the Chatham House rules and remembering our antitrust guidelines by refraining from discussing competitively sensitive information. Spring Summit is a non-commercial environment and a no-press event. We encourage all attendees to respect this principle by refraining from engaging in overtly promotional and sales-oriented activities during sessions and networking opportunities. This non-commercial ethos allows for open and genuine dialogue, free from commercial pressures or agendas. So, over the next 3 days, we have an action-packed agenda in store for you, from deep dive foundational sessions to morning and afternoon breakout sessions, from celebration receptions to provider mornings. There's something special for everyone. And this year's summit promises to be unlike any other, with several notable changes that reflect our commitment to inclusivity, innovation, and action, and a few key differences you may notice. Firstly, you'll see a greater diversity of voices on stage representing various membership types. So while energy customers have traditionally taken the spotlight, they're our whopper, this year we're proud to feature perspectives from energy providers and service providers as well. And it's crucial to recognize that each member type plays an integral role in driving the clean energy transition forward. So secondly, you'll observe schedule changes designed to enhance your summit experience. We've intentionally shifted the order of events, starting with the tabletop conversation sessions and concluding with our energy customer and energy provider mornings. This strategic adjustment aims to foster collective engagement from the outset and provide opportunities for reflection as the summit draws to a close. And lastly, there's a notable emphasis throughout the summit on DEIJ. We all know that's diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. And we've made a concerted effort to include DEIJ not only in the subject matter, but also in the identity of the speaker selection, recognizing their importance in driving meaningful change in the clean energy transition. Now, tomorrow you'll have to participate in Spark Talk sessions focused on DEIJ topics. Spark Talks feature action-oriented 5-minute speeches, highlighting the significance of individual lived experiences in shaping our collective journey toward a more equitable and just energy future. Together, these changes underscore our commitment to fostering collaboration, driving innovation, and accelerating action in the clean energy sector. Breakout sessions are located on this floor and on the 3rd floor, and all details for this week's events can be accessed through our event app. If you need assistance or have any questions, look for the red lanyards to find one of our 50 dedicated CEBA staff members who are here to help. So, my friends, let us seize this moment. Let us harness the collective power of our community and drive meaningful change. And together we can create a future where clean energy isn't just a dream, but a reality for all. Welcome to CEBA Connect Spring Summit. Let's make history together. And speaking of changing or shaping the future, I'm so excited to introduce 2 esteemed members of the CEBA board, Michael Terrell from Google and Emily Williams from Trio, who have an exciting announcement to share with us.
So 10 years ago, there were only 10 customers transacting in large clean energy purchases to decarbonize the grid. Today, over 220 customers have transacted for 77 gigawatts of deals. Woohoo! So CEBA has played a huge role in helping the market to achieve this scale by organizing across buyers and other stakeholders in the market. We're here to honor the past, the present, and the future of this great organization and community as we celebrate our 5th year of working together.
Indeed, and what a lot to be proud of. Michael, do you remember what CEBA's Summit crowd looked like 5 years ago?
I do. We were at a Disney property in Orlando, Florida, and it was Disney World, so there was a lot of energy and enthusiasm around us, but that was equally matched by the enthusiasm of those of us in the room, which, by the way, there were much fewer of us back then 5 years ago. But we all had a group of passionate people coming together to explore solutions for the clean energy transition.
So I'm really honored to be here with you, Michael, and everyone else in the audience, and to have been a part of CEBA's evolution as a sustainability and energy advisor at TRIO, as a member of CEBA's board, and importantly, happy birthday, CEBA. So this organization has evolved, just like the clean energy transition itself. Those original 10 customers saw that they were facing common challenges and could bring their voices together to have more impact. And the vision of CEBA came together from a group of energy customers with a foundation of support from some amazing NGOs, BSR, RMI, WRI, and WWF.
And those organizations that helped to form CEBA continue to have an influence today, whether it's serving on the board like we do, being part of our advisory board, or being individual members and collaborators. And I'd actually like to take a moment to acknowledge all the companies and the organizations that helped get us here. So the customers, the energy providers, the service providers, and the NGOs, a lot of y'all are out in the audience. Let's give everybody a big hand. I also wanted to give a special thank you to CEBA's founding CEO, Miranda Ballantyne. Miranda, please stand so we can recognize you. Keep standing. Miranda, I just want to tell everybody, Miranda, you poured your heart, your soul, and your ingenuity into this organization. Under your leadership, we went to entirely new heights. We wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for you. And on a personal level, you've been an incredible partner and collaborator. Thank you so much. Let's give her another hand.
And we are also so grateful to Kevin Hagen. Kevin, would you please stand? So Kevin has served as CEBA's interim CEO for the last year, and Kevin, coming from a position as a board member and an energy customer himself, offered so much insight to this team, this organization, and a real commitment to its members. So Kevin, thank you for everything you have done. So today, CEBA sits as an organization that has over 400 members, and 104 of those are in the Fortune 500. Today, 90% of clean energy deals in the United States involve CEBA members.
So over the past few months, our boards were charged with finding a new CEO for this organization. Not only someone who understood the needs of energy customers, but the needs of and the demands of the critical period that we find ourselves in now with the energy transition. And this is an incredible time for our industry. We are in the midst of this energy transition that we've all been wanting to drive for so long. It's creating new demands on grids around the world, but it's also creating new opportunities for leadership and innovation.
So when we started looking for a new CEO, that's what was front of mind. How can we both deepen and broaden our reach? Who can help us achieve the ambitious 2030 goals? And I will admit that we were working on this job description that seemed out of reach for us to achieve. And yet we did. So CEBA friends, I am honored and thrilled to introduce to you CEBA's new CEO, Rich Powell.
I've even got glow sticks. Rich, we are so excited to welcome you to the organization. It's great to have you here. You have a track record of bringing together stakeholders to solve some of the biggest challenges in energy. But before we get to that, why don't you just share with everybody a little bit about yourself and why you joined CEBA?
Well, I am happy to, Michael, but first I just want to say an enormous thanks to you and to Emily and to the entire incredible CEBA board and CEBA board for giving me this unbelievable opportunity. I'm deeply honored and humbled to be joining y'all's community, especially at such an amazing time for the industry and for the market. And I also have to say an enormous thanks to both Kevin and to Miranda. Kevin could not have been more helpful and gracious with his time and energy and wisdom in this transition, and I'm forever grateful to that. And it is not over. I'm going to continue to continuously ask for his help and feedback. And Miranda, who I can't actually see given the incredibly bright lights. Miranda, over there. I'm like the bad penny in Miranda's life. I showed up as her consultant when I used to advise energy companies back now about 15 years ago, and she's been stuck with me ever since. But I'm so delighted to be inheriting this thing that you spent half a decade building and growing, and it's just so wonderful to be a part of this community that you have built. So thank you both so much for everything that you have done to build this organization in this community. So about me, I have been in the policy space for the last 10 years. Before that, I advised large energy consumers and producers when I was in consulting. I live in Washington, D.C. I'm from Scranton, Pennsylvania originally. I have 2 little kids. And my previous organization, ClearPath, was very focused on policy. And when the CEBA team approached me about this, this moment was just becoming so clear in everything that we were working on. This enormous growth and new economic opportunity, new industrial development in the U.S., the immense challenge ahead for clean energy, the immense opportunity ahead for clean energy, both here in the U.S. and around the world. And CEBA just seemed like an amazing opportunity, amazing next step. And we talk a lot about, energy transition and clean energy and all that, but fundamentally we're talking about saving the world, right? Like that's why we're doing what we're doing here. This is about driving as much clean energy to reduce emissions as much as possible to fundamentally reduce the risks of climate change. And I think the platform that y'all have created with this community is a great hope for the world. So I'm very honored to join it.
So Rich, with that modest goal of only saving the world,
just saving the world,
in our day
no
job,
pressure to all of you,
which I think motivates many of us here. What's a big challenge that you see CEBA best posed to solve in the clean energy transition?
Well, I think the first decade really of CEBA and its predecessors were all about generating demand, right? And we're about aggregating an enormous amount of company demand for clean energy. And I don't want to say mission accomplished. There's a lot of additional demand that can be generated around the world. And I think we're now starting to find that the system is no longer constrained by demand, it's constrained by supply, right? And it's constrained by our ability to actually build at the scale and the speed that we need to do. And that's all kinds of things. That's markets and it's transmission and it's nerdy stuff like interconnect queues where probably an unfortunate number of people in the room spend their lives worried about and consumed about. And those priorities, those needs, demand an increased focus on things like policy and things like market structuring, in addition to all of the great work that we've done on aggregating and training new demand.
Thanks.
Rich, we had a board meeting yesterday, and this is your first time with the board, and you got to hear from everybody on some of the challenges and opportunities that are with CEBA right now. Maybe just share a little bit about what you heard and anything you're particularly excited about.
Yeah. Well, overall, I'm on day 8, so I'm still very much kind of learning here. And day 7 was a great day to have a first board meeting, so that was terrific. As was the advisory board this morning on day 8, and heard a lot there. One thing that I heard was much of CEBA's initial planning and our initial goals were set in a very different time when we were able to take a number of things for granted, like that we had an accessible, affordable, reliable electricity grid and basically flat load. And so we were worried about transitioning a grid as it was to clean energy. That's fundamentally changing with a rapidly growing grid and all of its requirements in the US. And this is not a muscle that we've had in the US power sector. In the last 20 years, we haven't had a growing grid. And so what I heard from the board and the advisory board was a willingness to open up to new thinking and new ways of evaluating our success and new ways of looking at the market dynamics that we find ourselves in.
Great. So Rich, I've got one last question for you. What are you hoping to get out of the next few days here at the CEBA Summit?
I have an enormous amount to learn. So in my past career in the private sector, I did advise energy companies, but I have never transacted an electron. I have never cited a project. I have never signed a PPA or a VPPA or any of the other things that all of the remarkable people in this room do. And so I have an enormous amount to learn about how this actually works. These things that I've been talking about for years in DC but haven't really understood how they happen. I am really excited to dig in with y'all here over the course of the rest of the summit and in the coming weeks and months. People have already been really generous with their times and very patient with all of my really ill-informed questions about how all of this actually works. And so I am really excited to dig into the sessions at the summit and meet many, many, many of you here and then hopefully in the weeks to come and learn a lot more about the very specific challenges you all are actually facing.
Perfect. Excellent. What a great conversation. Rich, we're thrilled to have you once again. And the timing is really good as we all gather here to learn and to collaborate. And just once again, welcome. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'm so glad to be here at CEBA and at the summit. And with that, let's get to it. I've heard a lot about this event. I look forward to meeting all of you or a great many of you. There's an intimidating number of people in the room, actually, so probably not every single one of you, but over coffee and at the receptions and at all of the events over the rest of this week. But for now, I'm very excited to hear from my colleagues Mark and Ornella, who are going to come on stage and give us a view on the dynamics we're seeing in the clean energy market today. See you soon, CEBA. Thank you.
Thanks, Rich, so much.
Thank you, Rich, and welcome again. Hi, everyone. We are indeed in a time of change, and we are here to tell you today that changing market dynamics may pose an existential threat to our movement. But because no crisis is complete without opportunities, that there are indeed opportunities we can all leverage and benefit from. We see two key topics, two messages that we believe encompass the state of the market. The first is that the true level of demand is hidden, and the second, that there is hope. And we believe being equitable and collaborative could save us all. So here's Mark to tell us about the first.
Thank you, Ornella. Indeed, the true level of demand is hidden. And we feel this is an important message for us all to adopt to stay one step ahead. So first, let's focus on what we can see. 2023 saw almost 13 gigawatts of announced capacity, a phenomenal achievement, incredibly strong year, our second best ever. 55 energy customers transacted, and as Michael mentioned, we blew through the 200 mark for unique energy customers transacting. That's over double where we were in 2019. And within that group, in 2023, 27 were also first-time buyers. So for a bit of context, last year we celebrated the new high for annual announcements, while in the same breath talking about the growing constrictions on the supply side. And this year, we saw some of those play out. But it absolutely does not detract from the fact that 2023 was an incredibly strong year. Congratulations, everyone. But the constrictions in the market are hiding the true level of demand. And these ultimately have intensified across all parts of the project development cycle and in the offtake procurement process. So at the early stages of development, we are seeing that many of the easier sites have gone. We're seeing land ordinances, we're seeing zoning hampering and slowing progress. And at the mid-stage, As mentioned, the grid connection interconnection process that was originally designed for a relatively small, number of kind of large centralized facilities has essentially kind of succumbed and is really creaking under the weight of the volume of applications and distribution across the modern electricity system, delaying projects, impacting costs. And we're also seeing utilities start to push even signed interconnection agreements with delays for material pieces of equipment, essentially just, pushing back projects. And at the later stage, anti-dumping and countervailing concerns are reintroducing equipment supply uncertainty, reducing confidences, and ultimately threatening project timelines and costs. Equally, getting skilled and unionized labor out to increasingly remote job sites is becoming an increasing factor. And overall, inflation hasn't been tamed worldwide. It might be looking a little bit better here in the US, but together with ongoing geopolitical instability, together with trade barriers and uncertainty, we're seeing increasing energy costs across the supply chain, and ultimately, prices of equipment and processes are rising. But despite these constrictions, it's fantastic that this community is winning. The project developers and the service providers who are fighting through all of those constrictions are helping to show that true level of demand. Everybody here is fighting the market challenges, navigating through the constrictions, and ultimately winning. 13 gigawatts is a phenomenal achievement. So showing the developers we've seen as part of transactions and that we know are leading in this space as a representation of the community, thank you to all who are driving success in what is a tough market. But despite those wins, that true level of demand does remain hidden, and we know this community could do more. This is the message for us all to adopt if we are to enable us to collectively stay one step ahead. So, anecdotal estimates hypothesize that only a third or a half of energy customers seeking to buy actually can and are, suggesting that another 20 or 30 gigawatts of hidden demand could be left on the sidelines. And then independent of this, IRA and CHIPS alone have stimulated over $200 billion of investment in new and onshore manufacturing, much of this coming with clean energy ambitions and adding accretive demand to the clean energy, the pent-up clean energy demand we already know and see and feel. This demand, coupled with growth in technology and transportation electrification, has ushered in a new era of electricity load growth. And this is ultimately an incredible time for economic growth, for jobs and opportunity. The demand is only going to go up. And it's important on many levels that we collectively convey how this community could do more. And it could also be crucial to help counter an existential threat to this movement, because there's another side to this load growth story. The unexpected load growth has prompted many in the utility and planning spaces to assume that new gas generation, or coal life extension as you see on the screen, is the solution to all problems. And you can absolutely call me alarmist, I will take that. But if we start having brownouts across the country, this could provide political cover to deploy gas or extend coal and effectively shut a lot of clean energy out of the market. So, be here in this room tomorrow to step into this issue and hear what we as a community can do to address this threat. But there is a ray of hope. Possibly ironically, climate change may help encourage utilities to partner with us, because in every climate crisis, there is an opportunity. The context here, folks, is that driven by wildfire exposure risk, many utilities in the US West have recently had their borrowing capacity reduced and ultimately the costs increased through credit downgrades. And we all here know that severe weather events will get worse before they get better. And so as a consequence, we expect these downgrades to continue across the utility community, pushing, maybe forcing, some collaboration. And this isn't US specific. There are increasing numbers of examples of historically sound utilities around the world where they're now seeing significant financial challenges and are searching for options. Some utilities may organically realize that this community could be an incredibly strong partner. But we all know that we are absolutely going to save the day. And we bridge that gap if we together can influence how we're seen by the utility community, by their direct stakeholders, and their influencers. So I also encourage you to join the plethora of utility and related conversations this week and beyond, because this opportunity is one of the rays of sunshine in an otherwise tough market. Speaking of rays of sunshine, Ornella, can you provide us with some wisdom and some more opportunities?
I will happily be your sunshine, Mark.
Thank you.
As demand grows, it would be very simple to rely more on natural gas. And we will hear more about how to effectively and responsibly manage load growth tomorrow on the stage. But there is a huge opportunity to actively engage host communities to earn their support for clean energy. We know we can do better than the first energy revolution. Communities are one of the greatest assets that we have to support the deployment of clean energy. They must become our partners in the transition. We're already seeing a growing number of projects bringing communities into the fold. And we've seen projects that have strong community support go through these hurdles that Mark just described more quickly and with less cost. It is a win-win for all of us. We are all actors in this transition, and we all have a role to play. Energy customers, there's a ton of you here. In your procurement processes, start asking engagement-related questions, like, do you have evidence of meaningful engagement that empowered communities to be decision makers? Energy providers, take these communities seriously. They can be your strongest allies to help accelerate your successful projects. Service providers, educate your clients on the need and importance of being inclusive. NGOs, work with each other. Together, we are stronger. We also need more aligned voices, and have those voices come from all sorts of backgrounds, political affiliations, sectors, locations, and so on. This alignment is important so that we can build a collective voice for clean energy options, to push for policy and regulatory developments to sustain equitable, clean economic growth, and to meet new buyer demands through innovation and innovative solutions. An ever more diverse community pushing in the same direction is what is required to bring the change that we all want. We also see the need for buyers, sellers, and intermediaries to work more closely and to build trust. These are tough times, and it will be more uncertain in the future. Known challenges will be different, and new issues will arise. Trust is going to be vital to help us navigate these uncertain market conditions, especially when compounded by the low growth scenario that we are in. We invite you to use your time this week and at all CEBA events to further build trust, enhance the collaboration that already exists, and build a stronger movement. As you go into conversations shortly, we invite you to lean into the trust-building processes that have carried you this far as pioneers in the clean energy evolution. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Ornella. And now a discussion, how businesses are navigating the clean energy market in 2024. Please welcome your guests and discussion hosts from Primergy Solar, Chief Development Officer, Emily Cohen.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. What a great to see such a big crowd here. Can't wait for the rest of this show. We're here to talk about how industry is approaching some of the challenges and opportunities in the renewable market. And one thing I think it's important to acknowledge is that renewables went from being kind of a small industry, kind of something you had to remind people what it was that you did for a living 15, 20 years ago, and now we're a big industry. And we have big industry problems that come along with that. But fortunately, we have some big companies, some giants in the industry, so to speak, here to help us think through some of those and help us learn from how they're navigating some of the challenges they're having. So to introduce the folks here, we have Rob Behrens. Rob leads sustainability, products and services, including strategy, offerings, and go-to-market at CBRE, so representing the real estate industry. Frank Palladino, who is VP of Renewable Strategy at Walmart. Maybe you've heard of them. He's a longtime renewable banker, so has been working in this space from a variety of perspectives, and now leads renewable energy strategy at Walmart and execution to help them reach their 100% renewable energy goals. And last but not least, we have Bill Cobb. Bill is Chief Sustainability Officer at Freeport-McMoRan, and he oversees environment, social and climate and sustainability affairs and risk at Freeport, mining giant. And I found this fascinating, so I'll say it right away and I'll steal the thunder. Freeport produces 9% of the world's copper and 50% of the copper used in the US for manufacturing, especially in the electric sector. So comes at it with a very interesting perspective, both as a buyer and a key part of some of the supply chain issues that Mark referenced earlier. So I guess, Bill, I'm going to start with you. What's with that dip we had last year? What do you think is causing the downtick in renewable procurement?
There's no one single answer. I think the last 5 minutes, I think we heard a number of the key pieces that are influencing the market. Clearly, supply chain issues, inflation, interest rates, the things that make an impact on the financial aspects of the deal. But we also heard a couple of, I think, really key points around energized communities and community support. What I didn't hear, go back to the start of this program, the Native Americans and cultural heritage and place and the influence on projects. The Native Americans play a very important role in this, and so there are a number of highly visible projects, particularly in the Southwest United States, that have been hung up over the last 2 years, because of concerns around cultural heritage. It's led to litigation, and so all the traditional financial issues. Then when you throw in the community and then particularly the Native American piece in the Western United States in particular, it's definitely slowing things down. But curious if the others are seeing same, different kind of perspectives.
I completely agree with you, but I would add, I also think that complexity of the deal is becoming, it's one, the client-side decision process, I think, is elongating because you have all of these other challenges, right? And then on the development side, right, I think that, and we talk about community, that process is elongating as well. So, back to the original statement, I think it becomes, it compounds the supply issue.
Frank, how about you?
I agree with my panelists here. I know we're thinking about access to power, cost, resiliency, and emissions. And when we talked a bit about access and the challenges with interconnection, supply chain constraints, those are similar constraints that we have when we're trying to interconnect a new store facility to the grid. And then costs are up. Cost for renewable energy is up substantially. The PPA prices are at places where we didn't think they would be ever. And
but doesn't it make those deals you did in 2018 look really good?
They do. Yeah, they do look good from a financial performance perspective. That's right. And then the amount of demand that we're seeing for power and something that we're focused on. We've had decades of pretty flat growth, and all of a sudden we're looking at 50 to 75% increase in load in the next 5-ish years. And how do you overlay all those challenges and that amount of growth with emissions targets that we're trying to hit?
Do you think that, do you feel that there are mechanisms underway to solve some of these issues, or do you feel like there needs to be some new policy initiatives to start clearing the path to accelerate deployment?
Yeah, are we going towards the positive now? Yeah, I think there are mechanisms in place. I think it's everything that you're going to hear for the next couple of days, and the people here, investment in offsite clean energy, trying to incentivize new build projects, whether it's through signing offtake contracts or other ways like doing tax equity. We're thinking about using less power also. How do we be more efficient when we're looking to remodel the store, look at our HVAC, refrigeration, things like that, being generally more efficient, building more on site. There's a lot of things that can be done. Broader partnerships with developers and owners and operators. So there's a lot of ways and strategies those are some things we're doing, and I'm sure you guys are doing similar things and other things as well. I'm optimistic overall about where we can go.
That's good to hear. Bill, how are you thinking about risk management for future procurement?
Well, before I get to risk management, let me come back to the policy piece and make a CEBA call out. So I don't know how many people got their CEBA email this morning, whole variety of topics, but if you scroll down to the bottom, there's a note about CEBA sending a note into Chuck Schumer relative to permitting reform and what's going to go into that, and his statement that was going to get tabled. But one of the things that I think CEBA does that I haven't seen a lot of organizations do, people are focusing on permitting reform and trying to shorten the time horizon to get from point A to point B on NEPA, particularly as it relates to federal projects. My view is all that does is it shortens the time frame to the first lawsuit. And what CEBA does have in its policy statements is we need to be focusing on litigation reform, and we need to take into account what that legal situation looks like, because if we can't sort that out as a society, all we've done is shorten the process to get to court, and that really isn't going to help us on the supply side. So shout out in terms of CEBA policy.
So I think I agree. I think permitting is a complex issue to solve because it's not just federal, it's state, it's local, as well as the judicial process. You work in communities. How does the community play a role in these projects?
Yeah, and I think this is widely variable across the United States. So we're primarily in a rural community, so we're going to have a different community response than a Walmart sitting in a major metropolitan area, major office building, sitting again in a major metropolitan area. And so the conversations in the rural communities are moving at a slower pace than one would expect. And so the uptake is not as fast. And so we're having to really do a fair amount of education around what really constitutes climate resilience and things that go into it. It's interesting that if we talk about energy transition, since we're in the supply chain side of this, those communities are attached to the mine sites. So it's jobs associated with the mining activity. The element of where the copper goes downstream, ultimately into the energy transition, doesn't quite resonate as much. And so for us, it's a slightly different set of conversations than my other two panelists here.
Rob, how are you discussing resiliency and how it connects to clean energy with your customers?
Resiliency and how it connects to clean energy is really interesting because I think a lot of our customers want to put a big on-site installation in and say, hey, we're good. But then you have to explain to them that that is not how it works and that is really not going to help you. So that's kind of the first battle is the piece of that education. And then going on thinking about when we talk about off-site renewables and large utility scale developments, really you use URI as at least for me kind of the excellent example of how that's going to add additional resiliency and ultimately downward price pressure in a lot of those more liquid markets. So that's how we're talking about it with our clients. Kind of start with education, move into the broader bit, and then bring it back to what can you do specifically at an individual location? What is actionable there? And then that comes back into what we were talking about earlier with electrification and load growth, because that's something that we've been having a lot of trouble forecasting specifically for a given location, and then bringing that into the fold to say, okay, this is the on-site bit or not, this is the off-site bit today, and then this is what we need to cover tomorrow. So kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but the short answer is actually a much longer conversation with the clients.
Which in turn is supposed to get us to a less complex place, right? That is ultimately the goal here, to make CEBA's mission of clean energy for all. Simplicity is definitely part of that, and it does not seem, we're still in the stew process here. We haven't really started to make this straightforward necessarily for all types of customers yet. Frank, how about you? How do communities play a role in your renewable energy deployment efforts?
Our communities are at the core of everything we do. Every conversation within Walmart is how are we affecting the customer, how are we positively benefiting our customers. Our purpose is to help people save money and live better. So when we're looking at off-site renewable investments, the things we're looking at are we're looking for high impact, high quality projects that are driving the right outcomes. Are we positively impacting local communities, including underserved communities? Are we adding to grid reliability? What type of tax revenues are these projects driving? The jobs, the emissionality impacts. So that's the lens by which we look at these projects.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about evaluating a specific project, right, and kind of de-risking it, we're thinking about developer maturity, physical location, project's advancement, certain individual attributes do they have site control, where are they in the permitting process, et cetera, right? Have you found that there's any kind of one or two absolute key elements to focus on in that de-risk and select outside of cost?
I mean, interconnection is probably a key item that we look.
Fair enough. I kind of stepped into that one, but.
But no, it's qualitative, right? And we've made some public announcements. Parties know who we've been working with. We look for high quality sponsors, but the projects have to be the right projects also and drive the right outcomes. For example, we announced a tax equity investment recently, community solar investment, largely residential offtake, customers in communities where we have stores that are going to save 10 to 20% on utility bills. 40 megawatts is in Colorado and focused on low to moderate income communities also. So it's those types of opportunities that we're looking at, in addition to the other types of factors that you would consider.
So it's been an interesting year. I think Mark did a really good job earlier talking through in 3 minutes, which was admirable, talking through the challenges that early stage, mid stage, and late stage projects are facing, from inflation to interconnection to transmission to supply chain. Can be a little discouraging sometimes. I will say, as a developer, I have to keep my head up with some of this stuff. But I guess asking the three of you, how do you feel optimistic about the next few years and how we're going to navigate through some of these challenges? And as part of that, what else should we be thinking about? Bill, can I start with you?
Yeah, so I'll encourage everybody in the room. Our CEO was interviewed on CNBC yesterday. It's about a 7-minute clip. It's relatively easy to find. And the crux of the conversation revolves around copper supply, and the impact on the energy transition. And back to your point about optimism versus, the significance relative to the headwinds, there's a lot of media attention on the disconnect between critical minerals, and whether or not copper is a critical mineral, that's a US government issue, but critical minerals, supply and demand. And if you think about copper's role in being able to achieve the things we're talking about, the projections do not look very rosy. And Richard goes in the interview to really kind of talk about the headwinds on the supply side as it's going to affect this energy transition. And the short answer is, you can build a data center in 2 years. It's going to take 5 to 10 to bring a major mine onto production. Just start thinking about the disconnect there. And so, that is really the thing we're looking at is, and he mentions it, what's the copper price, which then is going to roll back into what's the price of the project, because it's going to influence the elements of the project. What's the copper price need to be to bring those new major projects into production under the assumption we can get them permitted? That's his 7-minute interview. So it's a really interesting look for those of us that have 2030 targets out there. And you think about where you are at 2024 and what it's really going to take to bring all of that into alignment so that we're checking the box in 2030. Not trying to say it's, got a lot of headwinds, but, it's something that people are paying attention to, and I don't think policy solves the problem.
Well, so I guess I feel very optimistic about the future. Like, the opportunity is endless and boundless here. And I think we will crack the nut on simplifying offtake. And that's going to shorten corporate decision making. But now, to Mark's earlier point, right, there's call it a hidden demand signal. So we totaled up all of the new energy pledges from all of the corporate occupier clients that we have, 2019 through end of 23. And what we found is that it's actually equal to roughly about 2% of the US energy supply. That's just net new renewable energy commitments made over the last 4 years, right? So I think that, and that is just our clients, right? So I think that we're continuing to see this really significant uptick in the underlying pledge, which leads the demand. But the pledge has a date certain at the end of it, right? So that means that eventually we're going to be seeing a need for action. So that makes me really optimistic. I also think when we get the contract structures, when you think about duration and then the underlying price volatility, right? We can solve those problems. Those are, problems created by man, they're problems solvable by man. So I feel like that's certainly an opportunity for us. What do you think?
Yeah, so I've been in the industry a long time. It's never been easy. Like, it has never been easy. There's always been challenges, and I was a banker for a long time, and developers and owners and operators hire bankers when they've got really hard projects that they need to finance or sell. Usually the easy ones, they don't need that advice. So we've had challenges for over a decade, and the industry has continued to grow and develop and mature, and we've rode the solar coaster, and Emily, you spent time at a small developer and developing and flipping projects. So I think we've come such a long way in the face of challenging political climates, policy uncertainty. We do have policy certainty for the time being. We've started to see some more supportive policy come through, a bit on transmission recently, which has been a constraint and will be an enabler for expanding access to renewables. And got everyone in the room here, and you know, I'm optimistic on where we can go. It's going to be a fight, but I think we can continue to move in the right direction.
It doesn't sound like business as usual exactly is going to get us there, though. That we're going to need to have a few new structures and innovations, and as Bill said, some real thoughtfulness about the realities around supply chain as we set these goals and new ways to try to figure out transaction structures. And that's in large part what the CEBA community is here for, is to help put these pieces together and use our collective power to try to advance structures and bring more to market. I guess with that, I'd like to ask each of you, what can this community of nearly 200 companies at Summit, many more member companies, do to help make sure we see another 15 gigawatt plus year next year and doubling every year after that, or whatever it's going to take to reach our goals?
I guess I can start. You know, across our entire journey, we've had help. And we've had, you know, strategic advisors, you know, that have been with us kind of every step of the way from the first study that RMI did for us. And don't underestimate the value of the help. I do think, you know, going forward, your enterprise risk people, particularly those that are looking in the supply side, are going to be absolutely invaluable to understand where the gaps may arise over time in this. And we're on both sides of this, so I got to be careful because our 2030 goals are totally dependent on us getting 450 megawatts of renewables in place over the next couple of years, right? So we're very focused on the supply constraints, and at the same time, we're very focused on getting deals done because we need the 450 megawatts. And so it's an interesting mix of, you know, skills and risk management. And again, ultimately to make it work, those communities, the support out there, permitting, legal reform, all that stuff's going to have to come together to make this successful. But I got to look at both sides of it, you know, supply, and we absolutely need those projects.
You know, you touched on rural communities, and we also have a few stores in rural areas. I think it's important to engage with our communities, right? It's important to educate them so that they understand, engage with the community. We've been in communities for decades oftentimes, so we know the local legislatures, we know the utilities, so I think engaging with those communities and educating them on the benefits of new build generation and renewables, working with the utilities. We are a major customer of 950 munis, co-ops, utilities, and so working with them collaboratively. You know, we've had conversations. We made an announcement in January about how we wanted to enable 10 gigawatts of new builds projects to come online between then and 2030, and as part of that to enable 2 gigawatts of community solar. And within a few weeks of that announcement, I think we had 6 or 7 calls from utilities that don't have community solar programs saying, tell us more. You know, how can we learn more about this, and how can you help us? You know, how can you bring financing? How can you bring expertise? And can we do this together? So I think it's working with local, at the state level, your utilities, PUCs, and at the federal level. You know, advocacy, I think, is really important at the federal level as well for supportive policies. And there's a role for everyone in this room to play there. I'll also make a quick plug. We have a gigaton program, which is working with our suppliers to help them make more sustainable projects and more green choices overall, and met our goal earlier this year, and still working on what, you know, iteration 2 of that looks like. But to that point, I think, you know, working with our suppliers and partner organizations to figure out how we can enable more renewable energy in working with our other partner corporates is something that we'd be interested in having a conversation about.
So I completely agree with you. Not that community is not important, but especially around that last part, right? Working with other corporates to enable, because we have a lot of our customers that, need, say, less than 50 megawatts, right? Or, have to look at a time horizon that's 10 years or less, So things that we can do to simplify the complexity of this and to remove some of the, rather significant barriers to entry, I think that that's going to see this massive middle of the market start to move. And once, one insurance company's all in, then, you'll have the next 5 behind them, and you'll start to continue to see more and more momentum. And so, I've read about Project Gigaton, and I really think that that's tremendously admirable. We were looking at, something along those lines, and when you guys first did the press release, we're like, they took our idea. That's But either way, it's a really great program. So I think that doing things like that is going to make a significant difference to enable that transaction for your partners.
Yeah. I joined in August, so I can't take credit for it, but appreciate that. Yeah.
I think there's something really, really poignant there, especially for consumer-facing companies, of which there are many in this audience who have a really strong voice when it comes to advocating for renewables and the aspects of renewables that appeal to everybody, cost, reliability, resiliency, et cetera. So I think that's a very strong point to make, supply chain as well. I guess I will ask each of you, there's a lot of new buyers in this room today, a lot of people who are probably still thinking about doing their first deal and oh my gosh, what on earth am I even thinking? Get some recs. It's tough stuff, but what's a lesson you've learned from your process to date that you wouldn't mind sharing, either in your current roles or others, as you've gone through renewable procurement?
It's complicated. There's a lot of, specific legal issues that you need to deal with, and I think there's we've had the benefit of having a portfolio that we were executing in 2017 and 2018 and 2019, and seeing how those played out. And there's always things that pop up in working with an owner and operator of renewables. Oftentimes you don't sign the contract, and then 15 years later you're done and you move on. There's a lot of active management, so we've had some lessons learned along the way about certain terms and conditions that you probably wouldn't have thought about initially, but you said, really glad that was in there. I'd say get some good advice, and and use the resources around you also. Again, other corporates are here, and advisors, and just be thoughtful about it.
I guess a quick plug for a panel tomorrow, specifically on renewable financing, that I think is going to be quite interesting, and talks about what really happens after you sign the contract. And I think, Frank, you've got a great perspective on that in your life, having looked at the deals that many have signed with a more critical eye, probably. So, Bill, how about you?
I'm going to kind of pile on to the same point. So, again, we've been in the market dealing with the conditions over the last couple of years, tough conditions. So, again, getting help, key element. Patience. I can't undervalue patience. Because of those different deal terms, socializing those elements within the company takes longer than you really think. And I've been part of those conversations. And again, it's not necessarily all going to come together quick. And so if you're in the market literally today, dealing with the complexity of today, help, patience, realize it's going to take some time.
Get help. My wife tells me that too, so I totally agree. I guess the bit for me that I think about some of the early deals we looked at is, it's like the saying in the market, right? Pigs get slaughtered. Don't like wait and it'll get better, or it'll get, like at some point you've got to say, okay, it's not getting better. We've got to put a stake in the ground. I think that's really important, and I completely agree with stakeholder socialization. I'm always having one more pop out of the woodwork. And that just takes way more time. You want to move the ball 5 yards, you've actually got to deal with 600 teammates in order to make that happen. So totally agree.
And do your diligence. There's a lot of different factors you should look at when contracting with a project and with a partner that you're going to be alongside for 15 years. And maybe you won't be alongside them for 15 years, and that's something you should think about if that's the type of transaction you want to enter into. But just look at all factors and not just price.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Well, I want to conclude by really thanking each one of you for being a leader in this space and bringing your respective industries to leadership positions in renewable procurement. It's really great to hear your voice and how you're thinking about this, and quite honestly, to continue to hear your optimism, because I think it's going to take all of us together to continue to push toward our 2030 goals and problem solve. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
CEBA community, it's time for reactions and a transition to policy as the way. Please welcome back Cheryl Comer, and from Enbridge, Matthew Ackman.
How about another high five, huh? What a great panel of leaders, but I think it's time to celebrate. Do we need to, yeah? Come on, yeah? All right, all right, all right, all right. Very good. All right, so just as a listening check, what I have heard over the last couple minutes is that energy customers and this CEBA community have been and continue to be drivers of the clean energy transition, even in times of challenges. And this community is full of problem solvers, which I already knew. Balancing our members is part of my role as head of membership, and I have to say that this community is most impressive in the way that you support each other and come together for this energy transition. And one of the things that I'm impressed by is how members show up at events. You are contributing your time and your support and insights to make this event possible. And I'd love to take this moment to recognize the sponsors of this event. In particular, I'd like to thank our principal sponsor, Enbridge. Matthew, thank you so much for your support on behalf of CEBA.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Cheryl. Enbridge is really proud to be the principal sponsor of the Clean Energy Buyers Association Annual Conference. I'm going to try and do two things very quickly while I'm up here in the few minutes that I have. One is to do a little bit of an infomercial on who is Enbridge, and the other is to lay out, I think, what the challenge is, and I think the imperative for all of us to get a lot more renewable power onto the grid and succeed together, which is by working collectively, collaboratively, and cooperatively. And I think with that, with all the opportunity, we can do it together. So, Enbridge, we've been around for 75 years. We're the largest publicly traded energy infrastructure company in North America. And we've been in the renewable business for the last 25 years. And we're really leaning into that business right now, as many of you know. We are community-minded, we're stakeholder responsive, and we're very customer-focused. We're Canadian, so friendly. Easy to work with. Our motto is, tomorrow is on. And I think there's actually a Wi-Fi passcode, tomorrow is on, for the duration of the conference. Now on to a couple of the challenges in the face of tremendous opportunity that we know is all there. On the solar side, it's nice to have a basket of carrots, but I don't know about the rest of you. I do feel some sticks flying at me once in a while on the panel side as well, so there are challenges there. On the wind side, our friends upstream in the value chain, manufacturing turbines, are still trying to figure it out on the technology and profitability side. And I'm sure all of you will agree with me that there's nothing sustainable about losing money. So probably no surprise for you all to hear that it's probably going to cost a little bit more to put more renewable power on the grid. But if we work together collaboratively and cooperatively, I'm sure we can deliver the renewables that all of you are looking for at a reasonable cost. With that, I can also say if you do choose to work with Enbridge, we are a trusted partner. We have all the capabilities and the heft to deliver, and we do what we say we're going to do. We live up to our promises. So with that, thank you for embracing us as your principal sponsor this year. We look forward to getting to know all of you better and to working with you in the coming months and years. Cheryl, back to you.
Thanks again, Matthew, for all of your support.
Thank you.
One thing that Matthew said that really resonates with me is that he mentioned the role of collaboration. And our next speaker has been focused on collaboration and bringing people together to change policy. I'm looking forward to hearing his remarks. Please welcome to the stage founder and strategic advisor from Climate Voice, Bill Weil.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm delighted to be here. It's a bit like coming home for me, though perhaps most like finding that a formerly small town is now a bustling metropolis. I've been involved in corporate sustainability and clean energy work for almost 2 decades. And I was present at the birth of REBA, now CEBA. I want to give you some perspective on the history of CEBA, highlight some key facts about where we are today, and give you my thoughts on where you as individuals, as companies, and as CEBA should focus going forward for maximum impact. Some of you know this, but some of you may be wondering how I'm speaking. I'm not, in fact, a ventriloquist. I have ALS, and among other things, can no longer speak. ALS sucks, full stop. Fortunately, I can still hear, think, and type. I'm speaking here today with the help of a synthetic voice cloned from old recordings of me by a company called 11 Labs. You may be tempted to focus on the marvels of AI technology that can clone my voice, or on my drooling or coughing and choking, which might happen. Please do your best to focus on the content in spite of these potential distractions. Now let's dive in. Some of you may not know this, but REBA started as 3 separate initiatives run by 4 nonprofits. They were collaborating, but it was burdensome and confusing for the companies involved. I and a few others pushed hard for tighter collaboration. In 2016, we launched REBA as a brand and a website to serve as an umbrella for the 3 initiatives. And then 2 or 3 years later, REBA was turned into an independent nonprofit and since rebranded as CEBA. Along the way, I learned a ton about what drives different organizations and how to get them to work together, and perhaps should have been given an honorary degree in family therapy. I am astounded at the progress you all have made over the past decade. Our first big PPA at Google was about 110 megawatts in 2010. It had the same impact as a virtual PPA, but was done in perhaps the most complicated way possible. The progress since then has been incredible. This slide from the CEBA site shows corporate renewable deals from 2014 through 2023. For bonus points, you can explain why 2015 was so high and then the volume dipped in 2016. Since 2014, energy customers have voluntarily procured 77 gigawatts of clean energy. It's worth noting that when we launched REBA, we set a goal to help corporations purchase 60 gigawatts of additional renewable energy in the US by 2025. I think you blew past that. I'm enormously proud of what I helped launch, and you should all be proud of what you've accomplished. Kudos to Miranda, Kevin, and all of you. So why the focus on PPAs and voluntary procurement? We all wanted to do our part to address the climate crisis. And for many of us, the biggest issue we had was our use of electricity. We wanted control of our own destiny. We also wanted real additionality and to add new clean power on the same regional grid as our facilities. You may recall that 15 years ago, the global economy had just imploded. Project developers couldn't find buyers or financing. At the same time, wind was just getting cost competitive. That presented an enormous opportunity for us to have real impact by making voluntary purchase commitments. Given the state of the market then, and how early we all were in our own climate action journeys, it made sense to focus then on market access to accelerate corporate purchases. And as you know, the impact has been huge. At the same time, we know we are not on track. No country, no company, especially if you look beyond scopes 1 and 2. We need to move faster to avoid some of the worst consequences of climate change. Global emissions are still rising, maybe not as fast as they were, but they need to start falling, and soon. And we keep hitting new records for global temperatures. In January, for the first time, the 12-month running mean temperature anomaly exceeded 1.5 degrees C. Our carbon budget is literally going up in smoke. At the same time, in spite of the heroic work you are all doing, few companies are on track to meet their net zero goals. Companies simply won't meet their goals without supportive public policy. In the end, it's all about moving faster and at a far greater scale, not just to decarbonize company by company, but to do it across the entire economy. So where should we go from here? Let's look at some data. Thanks in part to all of you, the electricity sector is cutting emissions. Indeed, in the US, most of the reduction in emissions is due to changes in electricity generation. This is a bright spot. But if our goal is to address the climate crisis at scale, it's worth noting a couple of thorny issues that remain. First, other sectors, such as transportation, buildings, and industry, are not yet on a path to cut emissions rapidly. And all of your businesses depend on those sectors. Second, if we look at the electricity sector in more detail, we see rapid reduction in coal and rapid increases in solar and wind, but also big increases in gas-fired power generation. Emissions in this sector are dropping, but not fast enough. And we're building new long-lived assets that will emit greenhouse gases for decades to come. Also, demand is outstripping supply, especially for renewables. We need policy reform to be able to build and connect clean energy much more quickly that will help us meet most or all load growth with clean energy. We also need policy to transition the existing gas-fired fleet to clean energy. There are knotty problems there, but energy buyers can help untangle them. So what can and should you do? First, I encourage you to sign the lead statement. We wrote this statement based on private conversations we've had with many of you. It calls on all companies to raise their voices for climate policy. We unveiled LEAD at the Green Biz conference in February and invited the community of expert practitioners at the heart of this work to sign. Since then, almost 1,000 professionals have signed it. To be clear, signers are making a personal statement, not a corporate commitment. The statement calls on companies to do 4 things. Leave obstructing trade associations. Elevate climate policy as a company priority. Advocate publicly for effective binding climate policies. And demonstrate real commitment to the collective action needed to achieve the just and equitable transition from fossil fuels agreed on at COP28. We are sharing this statement and the signatories widely with companies, colleagues, and the media. I invite you to join 1,000 of your peers in speaking up and to also encourage your peers to sign. It's time to say publicly, as a community of expert practitioners, what so many of us have been saying privately. Second, your companies should speak up much more often, really lean in to advocate for climate and energy policy, not just electricity, and not just on Capitol Hill. Everywhere you have a significant presence. The point about trade associations is key, and for some, controversial. If you can change a trade association from the inside, stay and drive change. But if you've been trying to change them for 5 or 10 years, like some members of the US Chamber of Commerce have, it's time to leave. And third, I think CEBA has grown and matured to the point that it can own the true meaning of its name, the Clean Energy Buyers Association, not just clean electricity. It's time to engage more broadly on energy and climate policy, and as a group and as individual companies to more vigorously counter the obstruction from big oil and its allies. If you're looking for specific things your company can do in the near term, We Mean Business is accepting additional signatories for its Fossil to Clean letter through June 6th. Your company should sign if it hasn't already. Also, engage with Ceres on an amicus brief supporting the SEC regulations and speak out in support of the new EPA power plant rules. Back to the lead statement. To sign it, simply scan the QR code and fill out the form. The URL is also on the screen. One key point, many of you will feel comfortable putting your name on this publicly, but some will not. So you can sign publicly or confidentially where we won't reveal your name or affiliation, your choice. Friends and colleagues, this is an absolutely critical moment for climate. There are signs of hope, including the work you all do. And there are more and more danger signals telling us we need to move faster. You, your companies, and CEBA can help accelerate the systemic change needed to achieve a just transition. So sign the lead statement, then share it with your colleagues, especially those in government affairs, and bring those colleagues to CEBA meetings. It's time to go big and scale changes rapidly across all sectors of the economy. Thank you, Kevin, Sarah, Cheryl, and Rich, for the opportunity to speak here today. Rich, given your policy background, I'm especially excited to see where you lead CEBA. And to everyone here, thank you again for all the work you do, and thank you for your time, for your attention, and for speaking out.
CEBA community, please welcome back Cheryl Comer and Vice President of Environmental Products at AES Clean Energy, Aaron Eckenrod.
Well, thank you, Bill. That was an enlightening series of discussions that we've had so far. As we continue our exploration of the clean energy landscape, it's my pleasure to be here with Aaron Eckenrod, Vice President of Environmental Products at AES Clean Energy. AES Clean Energy is a major sponsor of Summit, so we are very grateful to you, Aaron, and AES for their dedication to CEBA. I'm stuck here, I'm sorry. Oh, sorry about that. And to all of our incredible sponsors of this year's summit, thank you. Your commitment to advancing clean energy and sustainability is truly commendable. Aaron, what are you looking forward to this week?
Well, not getting my shoes caught.
Yeah.
AES is excited to be here as a major sponsor of this year's Spring Summit, as well as a Leadership Circle member of CEBA, and of course, a sponsor of tonight's reception. And the agenda is packed with topics that are really front and center to AES. We are especially excited to hear about, on tomorrow's main stage, panel breakout about how organizations are tackling the AI boom. With the demand for energy that we know is coming, and arguably is already here, comes opportunities for all of us to help alleviate and reduce transmission, operational, and generation hurdles associated with this growth. We heard Mark, Ornella, Rich, Bill, and so many others talk about collaboration and this community as a way forward. I agree. At AES, one of our main values is all together. We take pride in working with partnerships with customers, governments, local communities, and stakeholders in co-creating innovative solutions to help accelerate the energy transition. As we progress on this clean energy journey together, we will no doubt experience headwinds and challenges just like the ones we're already hearing about today. Nevertheless, as an industry, we are all well positioned to meet these challenges. To learn that CEBA members such as yourselves are part of 90% of all clean energy procurement since 2015 shows how dedicated this group is and the type of progress we've made and will continue to make in the future. And you asked what I'm excited about, what I'm looking forward to. Well, on top of the content, and I mean this dearly, I really look forward to talking with all of you about how we can develop and deploy solutions together, and I mean together, to advance the clean energy transition. Thank you.
Thanks, Erin. And we hope you all will join us tonight at the reception hosted by AES. So as we end this plenary session, let's reflect on the insights shared, the connections made, and the inspiration ignited. Today, we've embarked on a journey fueled by purpose, driven by passion, and guided by the collective commitment to a carbon-free future. So now it's time to roll up our sleeves and dive deeper into the issues that matter the most. So after a 15-minute break, you'll have the chance to continue the discussion with our conversations session beginning at 4 o'clock. So here's how this is gonna work. The conversation sessions will take place in 3 rooms, and each table in each room corresponds to a specific topic listed on this slide and on your handouts that's on your table. And there will be someone that's hosting the table that will sit with you, but you'll have the freedom to choose which table you'd like to join for a round, for each round. And each round is gonna be about 25 minutes with a 5-minute transition between each round. And so you should have a list of these conversations on your table. So get ready, go ahead and pick up this list and take it out and scan it. And you're gonna choose 3, only 3 that pique your interest. Go ahead and do that. We'll have about a minute. These are thinking bells. Okay, so now that it was probably tough, I know, to narrow these 3 just down to 3, but you have your topics and you're gonna be going into your conversations in Adams B, C, and D. So it's these rooms to my right, next door. So please pick up the one or pick the one that most interests you and go to that one first. Find the room, and then there's a brief break now for 15 minutes, and we'll see you all in the conversations and for a reception after that. Thank you.